Welcome to Medical Marijuana and Wellness. Tonight's topic is medical marijuana, understanding medical marijuana part 3, inhalation for fast relief. And I should say that inhalation is really known as, has been classified as the main way of using cannabis. And although there's other routes of administration, it's probably one of the most famous and probably one of the ones that you get the most questions about or have the most questions about. Now, inhalation covers not only flower, it also covers vaping and concentrates. And we'll be talking about all three of these tonight. And as I mentioned, it is kind of classic, but it's also important to understand some of the tips and tricks to these, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, and also how to use it from a medical cannabis standpoint. So we'll have a video that will actually play, and it'll talk about those particular types of inhalation. And then afterwards, what we'll do is we'll answer any questions that you have that you bring up either during the webinar by hitting the Q&A button down below, or the ones you submitted ahead of time. And I should mention that anytime that you have any questions about medical questions, please feel free to call your doctor, call your medical marijuana doctor or your medical marijuana practitioner. This webinar is for information only. It is not trying to hand out medical advice. So that being said, let's jump into the video and some of the questions, and thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to Medical Marijuana and Wellness. Tonight's topic is understanding medical cannabis use, part 3, inhalation for fast relief. Now, before I begin, I'd like to cover a couple of housekeeping issues. First of all, if you have any questions, please feel free to hit the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We'll answer those questions at the end of the webinar. And also, any questions you submitted prior to the webinar, we'll answer at that particular time. As I follow up to this webinar, you'll be getting an email from us that has a link to a recording of the webinar on YouTube, the slides in flipbook format, sponsor discounts, and also other information. Feel free to check out marijuanaaware.com to see other resources for this particular topic, as well as our YouTube channel. Now, when we talk about routes of administration, there are really 4: sublingual, oral, inhalation, and topical. And tonight what we're going to do is we're going to talk about inhalation. A couple of things we need to pay attention to whenever we're looking at routes of administration or how cannabis is used. What we want to do is we want to understand the onset, that's how long it takes for it to start taking effect, the duration time, how long it works in our system, how easy it is to titrate or use, the availability of the entourage effects. In other words, do the cannabinoids, specifically THC, CBD, interact each other to give themselves a positive effect to enhance their efficacy, and also any required materials that are needed to properly use that particular route of administration. Inhalation is broken down into 3 different types: vapes, concentrates, and smokable flower. Now, smokable flower is cannabis that's burned, and then the smoke is inhaled. The cannabis terpenes, cannabinoids, and flavonoids are then absorbed into the lungs. Now, the onset is almost immediate, and the duration is usually between 2 to 6 hours. Smokable flower allows you to access a wide range of terpenes and cannabinoids that are usually not found in a lot of other formulations for routes of administration. But I do have to mention that when you're actually smoking flower, putting that 550-degree temperature up to the blunt or the joint will burn off a lot of the cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids. It'll reduce the medical efficacy about 50%. That's the bad news. The good news is it still works. You just have to use more of it in order to be able to get the desired effect for your particular condition. What's required for smokable flower? Well, obviously you need the cannabis flower, a grinder to be able to grind up the material. You need a rolling paper or bowl or pipe, and also lighter or matches. Vaporization. This is the process where the cannabis product is vaporized and the vapor is inhaled so that the cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids can be absorbed into the lungs. Now, there's a couple of different ways of doing this. There are dry herb vaporizers. These are handheld or tabletop devices, and they're mainly used for dry flower products. There's vape pens, which are available in reusable and disposable formats, and they typically use a pod system or a 510 thread. Also, there are dab pens, and these are also handheld devices, mainly using concentrates. Now, vaporization takes effect almost immediately and has a duration of between 2 to 6 hours. And there's a number of dry herb vaporizers that are out there. All of these heat or steam the flower, delivering a very clean hit. The advantage of dry herb vaporizers is you can set the temperature to target the terpenes and the cannabinoid production that you desire, targeting your particular condition. And also, they're all reusable. Now, what are the benefits? As I mentioned before, temperature control. This is a big deal because being able to target the temperature for the terpenes is critical for you to be able to identify the medicinal product needed for your particular condition. Also, they create vapor, means there's no burnt material, which is much easier on the lung. They're also portable and discreet. They fit into your pocket. They're resilient, meaning they're made of quality material, either aluminum or polycarbonate bodies. And they're also very functional. They're easy to use by inserting either flower, concentrates, or cartridges into the device. And the nice part about reusable devices is they're cost effective. So what's the right temperature? Well, as you can see, there are low, medium, high heat settings. And almost all vape devices allow you to set the temperature either, again, for low, medium, or high. With these particular settings, you can target the terpenes, target the cannabinoids, and you can also then identify actual terpenes for your particular condition that you want to be able to target. In my particular cases, I'm trying to target inflammation, pain, so I set my dry vaporizer to 356 degrees. Concentrates require the use of a concentrate vaporizing device. This is relatively easy to use, but not necessarily user-friendly. They are, however, very cost-effective. Now, how are they made? Well, there's solvent-made cannabis concentrates, which uses a frozen cannabis flower and a solvent-based extraction process. This could be butane, alcohol, water, or CO2. There's also resin, which is made by applying heat and pressure to the dried cannabis plant, causing the trichomes to melt, and then they can be scraped off the surface for use. There's also resin, which uses butane hash oil, BHO, which is the most common extraction process. There's also a live resin process, which preserves the terpenes and the flavonoids by managing the temperatures throughout the extraction process, ensuring that the terpenes, flavonoids, and cannabinoids are preserved. The main advantage of concentrates is the extraction process, and that's because the flower is flash frozen, and that flash freezing allows a better maintenance of the chemical composition of the cannabis plant, which is found at harvest time. And again, they use either solventless, CO2, ethanol, or hydrocarbon extraction process. Now, there's a lot of different types of concentrates. What I'm going to do is go through them with you to have a better understanding of each of the products and how they're used. Now, live rosin is created by using the solventless extraction process and also heat pressure separation. It's typically high in THCA, has some delta-9 THC in it. It does have a full spectrum of terpene content and also has some waxes and fats from the trichomes that are preserved. Live resin is created using the cold hydrocarbon extraction process. Typically, it's high in THCA, low in delta-9 THC, and has a full spectrum terpene content, but no lipids, waxes, or flats. Or no lipids, waxes, or fats. Live sugar is created using a cold hydrocarbon extraction process. It's high in THCA, low in delta-9 THC. It has full spectrum content, but also has the lipids, waxes, and fats removed. Live terp sauce, which is created using a mechanical separation from solventless or cold hydrocarbon process, is lower in THCA and also high in a full spectrum content. Now, batter is created using a cool hydrocarbon extraction process, typically high in THCA. It does have a high terpene content, and most of the lipids, waxes, and fats are removed. Diamonds, or THCA, are also created using a cold hydrocarbon extraction process and mechanical separation. It's the highest THCA concentrate out there and has some minor cannabinoids, but it has a low or no terpene content. Shatter is created using a cold hydrocarbon process and also can be made using a cold ethanol process. It's high in THCA, low in delta-9 THC, and has a medium terpene content, but no lipids, waxes, or fats. Wax is created using a CO2 extraction process and physical separation. It's typically high in THCA and low in delta-9 THC. It has a higher spectrum of terpene content, and it does have the lipids, waxes, and fats included. In fact, this is considered to be one of the safest and best ways to use concentrates. Crumble wax is created using the hydrocarbon extraction process. It's typically high in THCA and low in delta-9, and has a medium terpene content. It has the lipids, waxes, and fats included. There's crumble, which is created using a cold ethanol extraction process. It's high in THCA and low in delta-9 THC, and has a medium to low terpene content. The lipids, waxes, and the fats are included. Distillate is any extraction, winterization, decarboxylation, or distillation process, typically high in delta-9 THC and has low or no terpene content. And then there's a CDT, stands for cannabinoid-derived terpene vape cartridge. It's typically formulated from other extracts, usually high in delta-9 THC, and has a full spectrum terpene content. Now, this is a nice comparison chart of the various types of concentrates and also whether they have THCA, other cannabinoids, terpenes, and of course the lipids, waxes, and fats. I'm not going to run through this because there's a lot of information that's here, but it's very important to understand that most of the reason why people use concentrates is because of the temperature settings that you can make using the product and also the content of the terpenes that are in the product itself. Concentrates are consumed using either concentrate vape pens or dabbers. Now, the Hypnos and the Dipper vaporizer are dual purpose, meaning they work as vape pens and also as dabbers. Little Dipper is a dabber only. The rest of these are all vape pens, although the Proxy from Puffco is kind of a chic little device that acts kind of like a pipe and is very popular in the market. What are the benefits of using concentrates? Well, they give you access to whole plant benefits of cannabis. They're very easy to use. They're medically efficient because you can set the vaporizer temperature to dial in the terpenes and the cannabinoids for your condition. And also they preserve full spectrum terpenes, which is very, very important. And most of them preserve the flavonoids as well as the minor cannabinoids. I should point out that the solvents used in the extraction process are normally burnt away in the extraction process itself. So in summary, you have inhalation products that are vapes, concentrates, and smokable flower. And that's a pretty good summary of the various inhalation products that are out there, what they can do, their contribution, and their benefits. What I'd like to do now is jump into answering a couple of your questions that were submitted prior to the webinar. And I should also point out, if you do have any questions, please submit them via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen down here. We're here to answer your questions, and I know that it's something that this particular topic is one that a lot of people not only have questions about, but it's fairly controversial. First question is, does smoking or vaping damage the lungs like cigarettes? Well, first of all, anytime you put anything into your lungs, you have to be careful, because this is the inside of your lungs are in fact sensitive to a lot of different things, and especially burnt material that you get when you smoke or have lighted material that you inhale. For example, cigarettes. I'll take that as an example. And also, candidly, when you're smoking a blunt, that's burnt material that's there, and you have to be very careful of that. Will they damage your lungs? Well, it turns out that cigarettes have a lot of carcinogens in them. It turns out that cannabis does not. So although it's less carcinogens, it typically is less, let's just say, less damaging to your lungs than smoking a cigarette itself. Vaping, again, is where they actually heat the cannabis without burning it. What they're doing with vaping is that you are essentially steaming the cannabis to a certain temperature, which causes it to then melt. And when they melt, it produces the steam that's used to be able to inhale, and that's how you use the vaping products themselves. Vaping is a lot safer than anything that has burnt material, cigarettes or smoking a blunt. So the answer to your question is it as dangerous as cigarettes? The answer is no, because the carcinogen level is significantly less. However, when you smoke a joint, it still has some carcinogens in it. And again, vaping almost eliminates all the carcinogens, so it really doesn't damage your lungs at all. And I should point out that in the pharma world, a lot of people who have asthma have inhalers that they use to inhale into their lungs, and it provides medical relief to the inside of their lungs. And actually, there are inhalers also for asthma and for other conditions like epilepsy that you can buy that are cannabis-based. So cannabis entering your lungs, or marijuana that enters into your lungs, the method that's being used dictates whether it's going to be damaging to your lungs or not. It could be even therapeutic to your lungs, like these inhalers that you see that are available on the market. So the answer is really, it is not as damaging as cigarettes. But again, I do want to caution anybody who's smoking at all, be careful about what you're putting into your lungs. I'm a big vaping fan. I'm not a big smoking fan for that particular reason. I just want to be as safe as possible. But I do have to admit, vaping is a great way of using cannabis, and it doesn't necessarily leave me, let's just say, with the feeling of burnt material that I feel when I smoke something like cannabis or cigarettes themselves. So the answer is, it's true. There is less of throat cancers due to vaping cannabis than smoking cannabis that's out there. And in fact, cannabis itself has less carcinogens than cigarettes and tobacco. So it's a little safer for your lungs. But again, anytime you put anything in your lungs, please be careful and be conscious of what you're doing. It's there. Next question is that I'm trying other compounds besides THC and CBD. Please advise on what brake fluids included on, please provide a breakdown on what is included on the flower label. Well, okay, this is what they call a certificate of analysis, or CA. COA. Any medical marijuana product here in the state of Florida requires the seller, the dispensary, to have a certificate of analysis or COA for it. So when you go into the dispensary, you can ask them for this. They'll give it to you. Either they'll give it to you in printed format, but most of them have a digital, one of these little code, little round things that have codes on it that you put your camera over. A QR code, excuse me. You put that over the QR code, it'll pop up the COA so you can see what's inside the product. And they do that so that you can look at it when you're on the fly, whether you're at home or even in a dispensary. And what's inside of each of these products, as you can see, when you look at the COA, it'll tell you the route of administration that's being used, the product type classification, the potency, and also the terpene content. And this is an example of a product called Harlequin. This is from a company called Air, a dispensary called Air, or AYR. And this particular cartridge is a 1-to-1 vape cartridge. And I think this is important because a lot of people have a question of, is CBD available in smokable form? And the answer is yes, absolutely. It's actually available in vape form as well as smokable forms. And you'll find 1-to-1 cartridges as well as some flour that'll indicate that it has a certain amount of CBD in it that can really help you as well. I'm a big fan of 1-to-1 vapes because I just think they're a lot smoother. In my particular case, I'm trying to fight inflammation, so it helps me in there. And it also helps the CBD and the THC working together, really helps to trigger the entourage effect. So there, hopefully this answers your question. Here's the breakdown. Anytime you need a breakdown, please feel free to go in and ask your dispensary for the certificate of analysis, the COA. Next question is, can I vape for fibromyalgia and sleep? And the answer is yes. There's a number of people there's a number of people that I know, especially veterans, that have used that use vapes to be able to help themselves fall asleep. Now, here's what I do want to point out: when you're using a inhalation product, whether it's flower, vape, or concentrates, they typically work anywhere between 2 to 6 hours, mostly up to anywhere between 1 to 3 hours. That's when you get the main benefits from the product itself. So if you're trying to sleep and you're trying to stay asleep for 8 hours in the evening, you'll wake up 2 or 3 hours from when you started to sleep because the cannabis will wear off. Or even if it lasts for 6 hours, you'll wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning because the cannabis effect is worn off. That's why when it comes to sleep, I recommend using edible products, because edible products will last you between 4 to 10 hours, most average about 8 hours that's out there, and that's kind of the best way of going. But you still can use it for sleep. I know there are people that do. I have a good friend of mine that swears by it, so that's kind of her deal. And also for fibromyalgia, the answer is yes, because especially when you're using a 1-to-1 product, what you end up using is you end up getting into the CBD, which helps quite a bit with the inflammation. It has a neuroprotectant capability. And that neuroprotectant capability really helps to address the pain and the symptoms of fibromyalgia. Now, the key here is not just smoking it or using a 1-to-1 inhalation product, which we're pointing out here. That's very, very important. The other issue is pay attention to the terpene profile. And again, you can find the terpene profile when you go to the dispensary. Ask them for the COA, and you can actually just tell them, I'm looking for something that has, for example, linalool, myrcene, limonene, terpinolene. Just give them the list of terpenes that you're looking for, and they'll be able to give you a product that really helps and has those terpenes in it that'll help you, whether you're looking for an edible or if you're looking for inhalation. And especially for vaping, they'll really help you there. Now, a lot of the vape products and a lot of the flower products are very high in THC with very little CBD in it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just if you're using it for trying to address things like fibromyalgia, you may want to kick up the amount of CBD in that particular product. It'll give you a lot more relief than product that's low with fibromyalgia in there. And also, I also want to point out in our library, our YouTube library, there is videos on fibromyalgia and on medical marijuana, and that's bit.ly/fibro, F-I-B-R-O, 102523. And then also for pain and for medical marijuana, you might want to look at bit.ly. And again, that's Pain Relief M, and those will actually take you right to these particular videos on this particular subject to address issues that you might have that's out there. So really pay attention to the terpenes, Pay attention to the content of THC to CBD. Make sure that ratio is there so that we can be able to address your particular condition and be able to address your particular needs. And I hope that really helps quite a bit with answering that particular question. Now, I've left this particular thing to go to any attendee questions. I don't see any questions that have been brought in tonight. We don't really have any questions that are out there, but I do want to point out this is an important subject. I think inhaling cannabis is really, really important. I am a huge fan of dryer vaporizers if you're inhaling, and the reason that is it's a vape, and that vape is not only gives you, I think, a better flavor than if you smoke a joint. It gives you the capability to adjust for the terpenes that you need for your medical condition, and then also it's simple and easy to use. It's a lot cleaner to use than trying to smoke a joint. Excuse me. It's a lot easier to use than trying to smoke a joint or doing something like that. And I do want to conclude that if you're looking for a medical marijuana card, please look at MMTC of Florida. That's mmtcfl.com. They not only can help you get a card, but they do a great job of walking you through, especially the first 6 months of being a medical cannabis patient. They have a call center and a dosing center to help you be able to get the most out of your medical cannabis experience. If you're looking for a first-class cannabis dispensary, I suggest AYR, which is AYR Cannabis Dispensaries. They not only have great products, they have a very high quality standard, and they have an experienced and passionate bud tenders. These are people that work behind the counter that have really been trained to help you to bring the products to your attention and get you the products that you need to address your particular condition. I found them to be very easy to work with and also very helpful and help me with answering some of my questions on various products, what's in the products, like the COAs and that type of thing. And naturally, if you're looking for medical cannabis education, join us for our future webinars. Next week, we're doing one on edibles for consistency. Edibles are, again, a very hot topic. We'll talk about not only edibles themselves, we'll talk about the cooking with edibles. And also, if you want to check us out, so check that out at marijuanaaware.com. And also, feel free to go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/marijuanaaware, where you'll not only get this video, but other videos that can help you with your medical cannabis journey. I want to, first of all, thank you for joining me tonight. It's important that we get your feedback and we get this information out. And any questions you might have, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to answer those for you. Also, check out Marijuana Aware for the YouTube channel. It's very helpful information to help you with your cannabis journey. And I want to thank a couple of people that have helped me with this webinar tonight, which is Lee Jones and Leon Wagner. Without them, this wouldn't happen. And it really, you don't see them on the screen, but they're really probably the bigger part of this webinar than myself. So I thank you very much for joining us. Feel free to answer any questions and look forward to having you join us for our next